aspect that I've really loved about the New England area is the deep US history that has happened. It hits nearly every aspect of the life here around us. And the history of Christianity follows alongside of this. And that's what I want to talk about today, is a little bit of what happened in our history with US and Christianity. And you might have heard something called the First and Second Great Awakening, where many people came to Christ. But there's actually another one I want to talk about, which is called the Layman's Prayer Revival of 1857. And this is actually a really unique time in the Christian history and American history. And I'd love to spend our time just talking about it. But first off, let's talk about what a layman is. That might be an unfamiliar word to you. But a layman is simply a person who is not employed or find their time dominated by vocational ministry. So this is a person who's not a pastor. This is a person who's just making their income and making their living outside of the church. And it has nothing to do with somebody's biblical knowledge or their involvement or training or maturity or anything like that. It's simply somebody who works outside of the church. And so that's what a layman is. And sometimes when we talk about history, especially Christian history, we try to have assumptions that we make about it. And one of the assumptions is that people in the past are just more Christian. But that's not the time of this period. In the 1850s, this was a time when most people were what we would call a CEO Christian. This means a Christmas, Easter only Christian. Faith had little to do with a person's life. It was largely an unchristian culture. And the second assumption we sometimes make about history is that it's somehow more peaceful or more calm. But again, in the 1800s, the slavery issue was really hitting hard. In fact, southern states found that their entire time and economy was in slavery. Businesses were making really big investments, and this was leading to a stock market crash, which caused financial panic. And in October of 1857, the same year that this prayer group started, the New York stock market completely crashed and millions went out of work, businesses were shut down, and 4 years from this date, the American Civil War was happening. So history isn't always more calm and peaceful. And this is the world that the Christian world was facing. And what happened is there's a high problem of economy, politics are going crazy, racial tension is still high, and the economy feels like it's about to fall apart. Then comes this idea of a layman's prayer. What the layman's prayer idea was a part of a New York church by a man named Jeremiah. And he started with, he just wanted to pray for the culture. And the first time he did this, nobody showed up. Nobody came out to his prayer meetings. But he kept going at it. He kept going and saying, I really want to pray for this culture which is facing economy issues, racial tensions, political issues, and there's lots of fights going on, infighting, and I just want to pray for this culture. And it wasn't about being super Christian or being super vocational or anything like that. It was just the fact that this man wanted to pray. And people started to notice. And what lay people did, and people who found their source of income outside of the church, is they gathered during their lunch hours to just pray. And it was people like bakers, investors, housewives, businessmen, accountants, construction workers, city workers, factory workers, electricians. And what they did is they prayed for the workplaces and they prayed for a culture that's hurting. And these weren't about a big show or a big dramatic thing. It was just believers coming together and saying, let's pray for a culture that's hurting. And the result of this in the 1850s was that people came together. And people came together in a very meaningful and powerful way, that this eventually spread to other parts of the country. And in fact, 1 million people came to Christ, with 2.8 million being baptized. And this is a world without internet. And this was probably the greatest awakening that we've ever seen in American history. And it just started with people coming together and praying, let's pray about work, and let's pray about our hurting culture. And I can't think of a better way for us to start our new year, or is that what we as Be Free want to do is we want to commit our week, we want to commit our year, and we want to commit ourselves to saying, let's pray for our workplaces. Let's pray for the places we find ourselves in, whether that's home, whether that's virtual, whether that's the workplaces, whether that's school, whatever that is. And let's pray for our culture and pray with each other together. So what we'd like to do is start coming up with a 30-minute time period where we're going to gather on Zoom and just pray. What we're going to do is we're going to pray about the culture. We're going to pray about the places we find ourselves in. And we're going to lift up this place so that we can learn how to engage better with the places we find ourselves in. So please reach out to us, contact us, and we'll contact you as well, and get these prayer groups started.